So for our next talk, we got Thursday Bram. This will be a double session, just so you're clear. Thursday writes about technical topics all over the web. She's an organizer for PyLadies PDX and the PyDX conference, co-chair of Open Source Bridge 2016. Please welcome Thursday, who's going to teach us how to do technical blogging for Python programmers.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Just to start, if you have any questions or anything about this talk later on, here is all my contact information, and my Twitter handle is on all the slides. So I'm easy to find on the internet, and I do like talking about this stuff, so feel free to talk to me afterwards. On top of that, oh no, my speaker notes are not appearing. Okay, we're gonna do it without. So I'm going to talk about technical blogging, but first I have to convince you that I probably know something about blogging so that you all believe me about this. I've been blogging for well over 10 years. I've written for all these places and some other ones, and I've learned a lot about blogging over the course of those 10 years. I'm going to package this for easy consumption. And I'm incredibly lazy, which is why I just show you a list of places I've written instead of talking about all of them. And you should probably know that going into this. So this is a tutorial. It is interactive. That means that I want you to ask questions during the talk, not at the end. I am American. I use funny slang. If you don't understand something that I've said, please ask me to clarify. I also tend to talk very quickly during a talk, so if I'm going too fast, it is totally cool if you want to tell me to slow down. On top of that, I am also going to talk about online abuse in this talk. I'm going to warn you before I actually get into it. It does not bother me at all if somebody needs to step out of the room. It is a complicated set of emotions sometimes talking about this. And I will warn you when that's coming. Next, just to be clear, this tutorial is for people who aren't blogging yet, people who are newer to blogging. If you already have like a couple tens of thousands of readers, if you've been doing this for a few years, you might get something out of this talk, but I'm not going to guarantee it. But please come talk shop with me afterwards. All right. So I want to talk about my 3 rules of blogging, because I think these are the most important things to know before you start blogging on a regular basis. First off, be lazy. It's good for you. Hopefully, I don't have to tell a room full of programmers to be as lazy as possible, but the whole point of computers is to make less work for humans, and since I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords, I just want to make sure that we understand we want to be doing as little work as possible. Second, if you want to be a blogger, you also have to be a reader. That means reading what other people are writing, both online and offline. While you're definitely going to have to write on a regular basis if you want to become a good writer, reading is actually a little bit more important. Without good examples of writing, no matter how often you write, you will get into sort of a stagnated state and reinforce bad habits if you aren't seeing other people's writing. And we're too lazy in this room to have bad habits. So we want to make sure that we're seeing new content, new writing, and bringing some of that into our own work. Third, I want you to be a good accomplice. And what that means is that you are going to be interacting with other humans. You are going to be reading some of them, writing about some of them, and otherwise having that sort of interaction. As you go through the process of blogging, you want people to do things for you, like share your post with all of their friends. If you're going to ask something like that, you have to have some goodwill from people. You have to be an accomplice for their projects. You have to promote them. You have to talk about them. You have to help them. Blogging, just like Python, is an ecosystem. You have to take part in the ecosystem to benefit from it. All right, next slide. So I gave you 3 rules. I'm also going to give you 5 steps. These steps are pretty straightforward, and each step does require some work, which is why we're going to keep going back to rule 1 of be lazy. Don't do work you don't have to. But we're going to go through these steps in particular and talk about what they mean in your blogging process. All right, so we have a rule about reading and we have a step about reading because I think this is really crucial and it's hard to explain how crucial it is until after you've been blogging a while. And yes, personally, I love reading. I am one of those people who hauls around way too many books and constantly is at the library and always picking up new things to read. But even if you don't think of yourself as a reader, I really want to hammer home the point that you should be reading plenty. But since we're going to be lazy about it, let's talk about how to read efficiently and without, doing a lot of work. First off, think about setting aside time every day when you are going to just read. And that might be part of your career development as a programmer as well. In theory, as a programmer, you probably are going to want to pick up a new framework occasionally, or read about a security vulnerability, or get an idea of what else people are doing around your career. And if you set aside some time for reading for blogging, you can make it do double duty for the rest of your career as well. You also want to take notes that are going to be parsable. And when I say that, I mean things like clipping whole articles in such a way that you can search them later. I love paper, but paper notes aren't necessarily good for blogging because you can't easily search them and find that one article you read 3 months ago that is just brilliant and you need to link to it and it's perfect and you can't remember who wrote it or what the title was. This happens to me like daily. So when you take notes, you want them to be in a format that you can easily access later. You want them to be tagged, ideally. You want them to be searchable. I use a tool called Zotero. Tools like Evernote also have that sort of clipping and searchability, and there's also a ton of other options. I also recommend paying attention to writers that you know that you like. So there are a bunch of people who are already writing some really good stuff out in the world, whether they're writing about technology or something else. And many of them write for more than one site. So if you follow them around the internet and keep an eye on them, you'll get a little bit more of their good writing that you can use to inspire your own. I also recommend reading outside the Python ecosystem and even outside the programming ecosystem. Some of the best inspiration for technical pieces that I've written have come from academic journals, have come from short stories and fiction, have come from all over the place. So you want sort of a diversity of ideas. Just like if you're trying to figure out a new startup idea, you have to go out and talk to people of different backgrounds. You want to read things from people of different backgrounds. And then you also want to share the things that you're reading. And this sort of starts a virtuous cycle for your own blogging that we'll talk more about later on. But you want people to know what you're thinking about. You want to put those posts that you've found useful further out into the world. With that in mind, I made a reading list that is at this Google link. But before we go into it, okay, where's my cursor? So I have it on there we go. All right. So let's go and take a look at this. I want to talk to all of you about the blogs that you like, that you read regularly. And I want to go ahead and add this to this list because, well, I know that I live in a bubble and I always want to get out of it. And I have a feeling that a lot of you have blogs that I don't read yet and that the rest of the audience might be interested in. So anybody have a favorite blog? Am I putting you all on the spot? Is it too early for that? I apologize. I'm still going to keep asking. Oh.
I need to. I know I need to.
Well, we're going to give you a read
The
list.
only one I visit is agree or die.
Agree or die?
Yeah.
Let's add it to the list. Who else?
Does that have to be Python related?
No, absolutely not.
Stuckincustoms.com? Stuckincustoms.com? Oh, sorry. Stuckincustoms.com?
I was stuck in customs yesterday.
If you're into data visualizations, you can check out WTF Viz. It's a collection of the worst graphs and maps from everywhere. It's great.
What was it again? WTF dot?
WTF Viz. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
On that note, the daily WTF is quite a good one, but also hackaday.com.
Wonderful. This is like a good start if you don't read blogs to load up an RSS feeder. Not Google Reader because they have stolen my precious Google Reader from me and I'm still bitter, but you know, another RSS reader. So in this list, which is published online, I've also included some of my favorite technical blogs, some of my favorite not technical blogs, and a bunch of other resources I'm going to talk about later on. So please go ahead and grab this and share it and read it. And there's a ton of information here. So don't think you have to get through all of this in one day. But yes, there's some reading material for you. And just so that everybody has one last chance to grab that. Come back. That's the URL for that list. Okay. Everybody got it? Am I good to? Okay. Oh, what? Well, the URL shortener Google uses doesn't have an E on it. Okay. Sorry, I do not think that I have my windows set up in quite the right order. All right. Going along. There we go. Oh, we already did that part. We'll keep going. We get to skip a slide. Don't worry, I don't have that many slides. All right. So if step 1 is read, step 2 is write. Obviously, if you're going to be blogging, you have to write something sometime. Seriously. So there's like this quote, everybody wants to have written a novel, nobody ever wants to write the novel. Blogging is a bit like that. A lot of people want to have blogs, but maybe not, do the blogging work. But the thing about the internet and publishing on the internet is that you're going to have to write no matter whether you're publishing a blog, if you're publishing a podcast, if you're publishing a video blog, if you are just publishing your own projects and need to toss some documentation up on them, you're going to have to write something somewhere. So we can figure out some ways to be lazy about this, though. Even if you're having to write thousands of words on a regular basis, there's ways to make it a lot easier and a lot more simple. On some of my best writing days, I've written more than 12,000 words in one day. And that's crazy, and I don't recommend it. I don't write anything the next day when I do that sort of thing. I mostly sleep and maybe cry myself to sleep to get there. But for comparison, 12,000 words is a little less than the third of the documentation for Python 3.5.2. That's not actually that much. To have a blog that goes on for quite a while, you're probably going to be writing a few thousand words a month, which you can learn to do very consistently. So step 1 is we have to have a plan. It can be an evil plan, if that's what's going to work for you. It doesn't have to be an evil plan. But you do have to have some sort of plan. First off, you need to think about planning what your overall theme for your blog is going to be. You don't have to keep every post you write strictly on topic, but people really do prefer blogs that most of the stuff that they're going to read on that site is going to be fairly similar. In my experience, about 3 out of every 5 posts should be on your general theme. You can have 2 out of 5 posts that are about your cat or your breakfast or whatever really makes you feel good about writing. Furthermore, your blog can be about your own projects, but it shouldn't be just about you. We don't like people, as a general rule, who talk about nothing but themselves. That's true outside of blogging. It's true like at cocktail parties and coffee shops as well. So as you're thinking about your theme, think about what's going to interest people more than what's going to interest you to write about. You can have a very vastly different approach to writing about yourself, and it can sometimes work, but it's pretty rare. Furthermore, posts about you personally aren't going to contribute to a technical blog unless one of you's a simulation, and if so, I have some questions. Also, if you're newer to blogging, I really recommend picking a topic that is just right in the sense of it is not too big and it is not too small, which can be hard to think about, but I have an example. So this is probably familiar to all of you. This is just a bunch of different packages. Any one of those packages is probably going to be enough to keep you busy as a blogger for a while. If you write regularly about just a specific package or just a specific framework or just a specific use case for a programming language, you are limiting yourself, but limiting yourself comes with benefits. It means you're going to be better able to tell a long-term story through your different posts. You're going to be able to link them together and get people to read a little bit more deeply. You're also going to be able to more easily focus your promotional efforts on places where other programmers are asking questions about your topic. And we'll get into this more a little bit later. And there's still just a giant pile of material you'll be able to write about. Even if you're just writing about, say you're just writing about using Django as a CMS, there is enough there to keep you busy for years. There's always going to be updates that you're going to get to write about. There's always going to be tutorials for new use cases. There's always going to be complaints that you have about a particular project that you really need to tell the entire internet about. There's always going to be lots there. But let's keep going a little deeper than just general theme. If you want to be really lazy, I mean like really lazy, you want to plan your individual posts. And the easiest way to do that is with an editorial calendar. An editorial calendar is a document where you basically write out what you're going to write about later. So in this case, I have a template that we're going to work through as a group. If I can, I misplaced my cursor again. Whoop, there we go. All right, so here we go. This is what a blank editorial calendar can look like. It can be really, really, really simple. Post title, date, any research you might need to do to get the post together, what images you want to include, where you're going to share it. So I was talking about the Django as a content management system as a topic, right? As a general theme for a blog. So what can we write blog posts about if we're just focused on Django as a content management system? Anybody have an idea for something they want to know about Django? Yeah?
Unit tests.
Unit tests. So let's say that we want to blog once a month, right? So unit tests, that's January. What would we have to do to get some research? We might have to talk to some other people about what they've had problems with unit testing. We might have to see if we can come up with some best principles to talk about. But even within unit testing in Django, we've got a lot we can work with, right? Images might be a little bit complicated if we're talking about visuals other than just what code we're working with, but there's often lots of things that you can do in terms of flowcharts and cat GIFs and anything that helps make your material clearer. All right, so we've got our January post. What are we going to do in February? What are we going to write next? What comes after unit testing? Integration, yeah. All right, so there's February. Well, in a lot of places, March is like a spring break month, right? Or at least it is in the US. I don't know when spring break is here. I'm sorry. I'm American. I shouldn't be let out in my own country sometimes. Let's.
It would make it difficult for you to speak here if you went like that.
There's most definitely that. But is there some sort of vacation in March typically here? Some vacation time? Easter? Is April. All right, so let's skip to April. It makes my example better if we skip to April. March is not an important month. All right, so in April, people have, vacation time. They might have to spend some of it with their family, but hopefully they're going to have some time for themselves. So what's a project that we could talk about, a tutorial maybe, for Django? What could we give them a homework assignment for their spare time? Anybody? Oh, an e-commerce tutorial. That could be fun. Yeah, so we could do a tutorial when we know that somebody's going to have more time to work on it. And an e-commerce tutorial would still be fairly evergreen. Until there's been a major update in Django, it's going to stay basically the same, right? So it'll be something that people can come back to later as well. With a tutorial, you're probably going to want to do even more images than normal. You're going to want to do a lot of screenshots. You want to tell people exactly what they're supposed to be getting when you're teaching them something to do. But you've got kind of images built in. The research, you just have to do the project and make sure that it works. And then you'll be able to share it. So that's one approach to editorial calendars. I'm actually going to show you what I do instead of that approach, though, because the way that I prefer to work on projects is when I have a very specific project that I want to write about, or a very specific theme that I want to write about. I probably like the topic enough that I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about it pretty routinely. So, for instance, with Django as a CMS, maybe I'm thinking that long term, I want to do sort of a guide to Django as a CMS, right? I want to wind up, guide to, this doesn't count as live coding, so I'm allowed to do this during a talk, right? So I want to do a guide to Django as a CMS eventually. I want to have an ebook that I could share with people that really drives home everything they need to know about Django as a CMS, but I want to be lazy about it. I want to do as little work as possible. So in this first column, I'm just going to do my outline. I know I'm going to want to have a section on e-commerce, going back to our tutorial. I know that I'm going to want to have a section on teaching people to put stuff in the content management. And I'm going to have probably a good 10 different pieces that I'm going to eventually want, right? And then for each of those sections, I'm just going to write the post. I'm going to write my e-commerce tutorial for my blog. And if I'm going to be promoting it anyhow, and if I'm already doing all this research, maybe I should write a blog post for somebody else's site too. Maybe a list of e-commerce plugins. Sorry, I have all sorts of weird things in my list of. Because, I'm going to have a tutorial in my ebook, but I'm probably going to need this list somewhere for my research anyhow. So I can just grab it and move it over. This approach is a little bit different. They're both totally valid approaches, but just however you think, however makes sense to work for you, planning this stuff out in advance makes it a lot easier. All right, any questions about editorial calendars? Because I'm totally cool with answering them.
Do you go so far as to like schedule the posting? So you're like months ahead?
So in a perfect world, I would absolutely do that. However, we have established that I am super lazy and I also procrastinate quite a bit. So sometimes I do. I actually had one client where I wrote 40 blog posts in a month and scheduled them out for a full year worth of content. I charged them a bunch of money too, so that was really nice. Yes. I like being rewarded for my efforts. Yay, capitalism. No. Anyhow. In an ideal world, I do recommend writing ahead and putting things out there. In the real world, where we all have jobs and lives and not enough time for anything, the things that are really important to put out ahead of time is if you're about to launch something new. Say you've got a new version on a project you've been working on that you're about to bring out. You have to have your posts written for that ahead of time because you want to make sure everybody understands what's changing. You want to make sure that everybody has a chance to start understanding what the differences are kind of as far in advance as possible, especially if you've got something that people depend on. Opinion posts, if they are good, are usually tied to current events, so those don't have to be written in advance. Tutorials are one of those things that unless you are launching something brand new and you need to give people a way to use it with a tutorial, your tutorial can come out honestly whenever. It's good to plan things when you know that people will actually use them, but beyond that, a lot of content can just go up whenever. There are a lot of people who go very crazy down the analytics rabbit hole, finding like Tuesdays are the best days to post blogs. We're not them. We're lazy, so the most important thing is to actually write the post and then, put it up. So don't worry about those things unless you are in a position where it makes sense to worry about them. If you are making your entire living from your blog, yeah, what day you post probably matters. If you are doing this as a way to document your projects, as a way to make sure that recruiters know the things that you actually want to work on, or as a way to just sort of write down the things that you know that you're going to forget later, all of those, timing isn't going to matter a whole lot. Okay, so once we have, all of our post ideas ready to go, we need some research. And we can't get it by osmosis, unlike this cat, but someday. And one of the reasons I actually developed my own approach to making an editorial calendar is the question of research, is making sure that I'm not doing too much work as I'm researching. Because if I am working on posts of a similar topic, I can do all the research in one go. I can just batch process it, find all my links, get all my images together, and just get it all done and get it ready to go. I'll admit that a huge chunk of my research is just going back through all those notes that I took as I was reading. I don't necessarily dislike doing additional research, especially if I have specific questions I need to answer to finish a post, but I try to make a separate time to do research from a time to do my writing, because once you get stuck on Wikipedia, you're probably going to be there a little while. Especially with technical blogging, you also often find yourself needing to actually write a program to prove that the thing that you're writing an opinion about works. Or if you're writing a tutorial, you have to actually, make sure that the end product of the tutorial is what you want it to be. I have some comments about tutorials on the web that I won't get into, but if you want a lot of opinions, come find me later. But all of that, if you bring it together, if you're doing it in one go rather than as you're writing, the whole process goes so much faster.
How do you avoid going down rabbit holes?
Well, you're going to go down some. Let's be honest, Wikipedia is engineered for that. But if you are able to say, I have these specific things that I need to answer, that's usually really, really helpful. I set timers because if I've been doing the same thing for 2 hours, I've probably been doing it too long. At the very least, I should get up and stretch at that point. And 2 hours is, also often a sign that I've completely gotten off track. So I do recommend timers and having a plan before you start. All right. So we have a plan, we have some research. We need to talk about our post format. How are we going to take all the research that we've got and make it into something that somebody is going to want to read? There's a wealth of different ways that you can format any post that you're writing. Tutorials are a really good example because you can do a lot with a basic tutorial format. Yeah, you've got to have steps, right? But you can have explanations at the beginning. You can have conclusions at the end. You can bring in examples of other people who have used this sort of tutorials or this sort of technology. On top of that, there is some difference between writing different formats, right? If you are writing a review of a piece of software that you used to recommend it, you're going to do different things than if you're writing a tutorial. Just like if you're writing a poem, you're going to do different things than if you were writing a comedy routine. You can turn a poem into a tutorial or a comedy routine into an opinion piece, but it's a lot harder and it's easier just to start with the right format to begin with. And there's a fairly simple way to start getting a feel for different formats. And because I am lazy, I stole this one off of all the marketing folks that I have to hang out with. And it's a concept called a swipe file. So in marketing, if you write a lot of marketing copy, you start staring at everybody else's marketing copy and seeing what they did that you liked and what they did that you hate. And you start carrying a lot. So you start saving everything. And you wind up with all these clippings of headlines and articles and other copy. And that works for blogging too. As you start blogging, you start caring a lot more about how other people write and noticing things that you like other people writing. So when you notice those things, go ahead and just grab a copy of it. Whatever tool you're using for your note-taking hopefully will let you just grab a copy of an article or a headline, and then you have essentially a template. You should never straight up plagiarize somebody else, but if you notice that their headline format works really well with your idea, you just change the words and keep the same format. That's not plagiarism, that's totally fine, and that's actually a really easy way to start implementing some of the cool things you see in other people's writing. It's just like taking a code base and just tweaking it for your own needs. So I've been doing this for years, and I've got a tutorial template that I use for my projects that's basically just other tutorials that I've taken. I've deleted the actual project out of it, but kept the format, and I keep tweaking it. And I would share it with you, but there's lots of profane comments, and I'm still hoping you all like me. So I won't be just giving that off. If you really need the tutorial template, come talk to me later. But we've finally gotten to the important part, the actually writing things. I know blogging sounds like it should be mostly writing, but it sadly isn't. The thing about writing is it's always a personal process. Some people need total quiet. Some people can only write in the middle of the night. Other people have to talk out their whole article before they can actually commit it to paper. The only way to figure out what's true of your writing process is to start writing and see if it goes well, and if it doesn't, change something. Then write some more and see if it goes well, and then change something. This is not as lazy as I would like it to be, but you have to have baseline data before you can tweak things. There are a lot of tools you can use to start finding more of those things. There's a lot of tools you can use to automate certain parts of your writing. You can use a style guide to help you make sure that you're choosing the right words. You can use, there's some apps that will help you count how many adverbs you have in your article, because some people don't approve of adverbs, which is a whole nother talk. But you still have to have that baseline data before you can get started. All right, so hopefully by this point, we have a blog post that we can post, we can publish, we can send out into the world so that the world can tell us how amazing our blog post is. And this is the section where it's easy to really just start nerding out, and it's hard to remain appropriately lazy. While you can write however you want, there are so many different publishing tools that you could start playing with and tweaking, and you could roll your own content management. No, never roll your own content management system. This is the golden rule of laziness. I have gone down this rabbit hole like 3 times. It never ends well. There's some crazy eyes going on here, I fully admit, because this is a bad idea. Trust me on this one. You will have the feeling regularly that, oh, I just want my content management system to do one more thing. I'm going to write a plugin, or this whole thing doesn't work for me. I should write a whole new content management system. Do not give in to that feeling. Go check the internet. Somebody's already done it once. With that said, let's talk about what content management systems we should use. Especially, this is a Python conference, so let's talk about some of the Python options. But before we do that, I need to be really controversial and say, you know what? Just use WordPress when you're starting. And let me explain. I know WordPress has problems. I know there are security vulnerabilities here and UX issues there, and there's this massively bloated code base. But guess what? We're not talking about coding here. We're talking about writing. And the biggest downfall for a new technical blogger is that they start caring about the technology more than the writing. So you have to just start with something that you can start writing today. You want to use something like WordPress or Tumblr or something incredibly easy to put words into, because you don't want there to be any friction between you and your writing. And then when you've got, the good habits of blogging, you're writing a post on a regular basis, people are starting to like your stuff, then you can move your blog to whatever you want. Then I give you my blessing to actually start caring about your content management system. At that point, you can start talking about whether you want to do something with Flask blog, or if you want to use a static site generator, or something like that. I will say I do like Flask blog as an option. Pelican is pretty interesting to me, but there are some things with the whole blogging workflow that I haven't quite gotten to work correctly with static site generators. But we can go into technology in a whole nother talk as well, because I could talk about that alone for 3 hours and have done that. With that in mind, you don't have to post your blog posts on a site that you exclusively control, especially when you're just getting started. WordPress.com is an option, but so is going and joining a group blog, somebody who will already, edit your writing and give you some feedback and have all of the structure in place. There's a ton of guest posting opportunities as well, even if you haven't written a lot online. If you want to write for one of the blogs that you read, check. There may be a way to do that. It's also a good way to promote your blog when you get to that point. Let's see. All right. So where are we? We're on posting. Okay. So once you have, a place to post your stuff, you're probably going to start having a checklist of your own to make sure that you're posting everything correctly. You might have to do tags for your blog, especially if you're working with somebody else's blog. People seem to care a great deal about getting tags correctly, but I don't. But here are the things that are the most important to do before you post your blog post. Have another human read your blog post. There are a ton of apps that promise to edit your work. They all lie. Other humans are important to this process. Other humans can say, oh, I don't understand this thing, even though all your adverbs are in the correct spots. Other humans can say, you need more information about this, or this piece is probably going to offend somebody, and are you sure you want to include it? You should, use spell checker and those sorts of things. You do want everything to be spelled correctly. You can always edit a typo later. It's not the end of the world if a typo goes through, but, as a general rule, try to get it right the first time. It's far less lazy to go back and tweak things later. You also want to check specifically if you're writing technical blog posts, if your code is easy to read. If you are showing code to other humans, you want them to be able to understand it. You probably also need to think about your images. Humans connect really well with images. We like other people's faces. We like cats. We like babies. We like all sorts of things. And anytime we see blog posts with pictures, we are far more likely to read them. If you don't have at least one image, the odds of your blog posts getting read go down dramatically. And it doesn't have to be a complicated image. It can be just something that you get off of Flickr's Creative Commons site. It can be that simple. Just get something. You also want to make sure that all of your links work. WordPress does have some problems here, I fully admit. You'll see that if you use it, but everything else does too. And then you also want to think about what time and date you are publishing this post at, because you want to make sure that it actually goes up at some point. All right, so, okay. So I want to talk about an example post to show you a little bit more about what I mean. And I chose this post, first of all, because Katie is speaking. Second of all, because I get to make a Klein bottle joke. But I won't, because it goes over as well as my tax jokes. But there's a fair chunk of code in this post. And Katie's gone out of her way to sort of offset it, make sure that it's in a different font, make sure that it's very clearly code, so nobody's going to mistake it for something else. She's also made sure that it's very human-readable code. Even if this wasn't what she was originally actually dealing with, it's very easy to read now. And I think, yeah. So she's even got some diffs, which make it a little bit more visually interesting, as well as making the information clearer. And it's a fairly short post. It's just on something that she had to do anyhow, so she wrote down how to do it. And it was great. If you write about things that you have to do anyhow, not only are you getting double use out of them, when you inevitably forget how something works in a year, you can Google and find your own blog post and realize, wait, I've done this before, I know how to do this. I do that a lot. All right, so back into here, and okay, we're actually making great progress. All right, so next is step number 4, sharing your blog posts. Even your loving, adoring parents will not read your blog posts if you do not share them, because they won't know that they exist. You have to tell people you have a blog. And I'm going to make a reference to something from American pop culture that I hope translates, but in the reading list there's a fuller explanation, because I'm not sure how many people here have seen the movie Field of Dreams. It's Kevin Costner. He's a farmer in the middle of Iowa, and he starts hearing voices that tell him, if you build it, he will come. So, like anybody who hears voices in the middle of their cornfield, he went out and built a baseball diamond in the middle of his cornfield, and ghosts show up to start playing baseball in it. And the point is that even Hollywood thinks that if you just build something and don't tell anybody about it, the only way you're going to be successful is if you know a bunch of ghosts who want to show up and play baseball in your cornfield. So unless you have, a lot of ghosts that you're going to talk to, maybe share your posts with people. You don't have to be a marketing machine. You don't have to be a marketing jerk. You can just start sharing your posts on the places that you're posting anyways. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Reddit, Hacker News, any of these sites, you can contribute your own things. You don't necessarily want to run the me show. We've already talked about how a lot of people don't like people who talk only about themselves. So this is where your reading habits come back in. Because, oh wait, you've been reading all sorts of things. You have things from people who aren't you to share already. So if you're on Facebook or if you're on Hacker News, go ahead and share those things as well as sharing your own material. Anecdotally, I've found that on most sites, sharing about 3 or 4 things from someone else means that my work is more likely to get seen. Hacker News is a really good example to talk to here because they actually algorithmically penalize anybody who just puts up links from their own site. Other sites do similar things, but it's less obvious. So try to make sure that you're posting other things. And oh wait, that means that you regularly have material to post if you have access to other people's posts that you've taken notes on. A few caveats. Don't just share stuff from big blogs. Everybody reads the big blogs. Well, not everybody, but enough of the internet. Share things from your friends. Promote people you actually like. Share things that aren't getting seen by everybody, and you'll set yourself apart. Also, before you share something on like Twitter, read the article yourself. I see this a lot. People will share something, and then I'll click through, and it will be horrible. There won't be any punctuation. There won't be, something worth reading. And they'll be like, oh, I just thought the headline was so good, so I just hit retweet before I even clicked through. And please, please, please make me a happy Thursday and never do that. Ever, 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 ever. All right. So let's talk a little bit about where we share and where we get our news. Anybody have like a particular site that they really, really like the content on, the blog posts on, especially a technical one?
The site Linux Weekly News has been running for a very long time, and they were doing the combination of news site and blog site for quite a while. They've got a bunch of good editors there and fresh content every week.
Okay, so let's take a look at Linux Weekly News and see if there's a way to share things with them to let them know. Oh wait, right here, it says write for us. Let's click on that. All right, so these are actually pretty in-depth submission guidelines. It's really good to see this on a website. And they're specifically looking for articles. They might not want to share just a single blog post, but if you have more than one idea about a specific topic that you want to share, say that e-commerce template, you also need to write a list of e-commerce plugins from earlier, you could take your that e-commerce plugins list or something like that and go to another site and say, hey, can I run this on your site and link it back to my blog? That'll give you a chance to share your blog as well as specific articles, because you can link to specific articles as well as your broader site and get people to your specific blog post. Make it a little bit more interesting for them. Some sites will also give you the chance to just send in links. A lot of sites will, does everybody here know Smashing Magazine? They've got a tip email where you can send in just links to things that are relevant to their audience, and they'll put them on their Twitter and other social media accounts. They'll share your post for you as long as it's relevant to their interests. And you can do that on a whole wealth of different sites. Another example I want to specifically share, Planet Python. So Planet Python pulls together a bunch of different blogs, and it's super easy to get your blog included if you're willing to scroll for like a million hours. All right, there we go. All right, so to add or remove a blog, you just open an issue on GitHub. It's so easy. There's no reason not to share your blog at that point, provided it's about Python and it's relevant to Planet Python. But there's a ton of different sites like this that do make it easy for you to share your work. So go out there, share it, make sure that other humans get a chance to see it. Sorry. There we go. All right. So let's talk about the benefits of blogging. Why are we bothering to do all of this? Blogging has major benefits, especially for programmers. I run this workshop for PyLadies PDX yearly, along with a monthly meetup where we sit down and we talk about individual blog posts. We share them amongst ourselves. We tweet each other's stuff constantly. And I can draw a direct line between PyLadies who have come to the workshop, who have regularly come to the meetups, and who have posted regularly, and new jobs, a book deal, paid freelance writing gigs. Like, there's a lot of money that can come your way from this sort of writing. It also helps you build up a little bit of a profile. If you want to speak more often, if you have blog posts that are related to the topics you want to speak on, this helps show the people who choose speakers for different conferences that you actually know what you're talking about. You've written blog posts. You are an expert. And seriously, the moment you write something, no matter whether you feel like an expert or not, other people are sure you are an expert. You can write one single article on WordPress.com about an obscure Python bug, and people will email you 3 years later asking about it. Like, that's how expertise works on the internet, I promise. All right. Making sure that you get those benefits does require a few things. You do have to write regularly. You do have to actually put your name somewhere on your blog. You would be surprised at how many people don't. You have to go ahead and consistently use that name. So if you are using a pen name, and there are some reasons we can discuss why, you have to use the same pen name when you are commenting, or when you are in social media, or when you are on anywhere. You also need to put some way to contact you on your blog. I have been on projects where there have been thousands of dollars involved, and we have been trying to contact a blogger whose only method of contact is adding comments to old blog posts, and that's really not an efficient mechanism. So really, please, make it easy for people to send you messages. I'm a big proponent of contact forms rather than directing somebody to your social media or an unobscured email address, but there's reasons to do both. So please consider making it clear who is writing your blog. So this is where I'm going to talk about some of the less great stuff about blogging. So I do want to give folks a chance to step out if a discussion of online harassment is going to be tough for you, if it makes you uncomfortable, and no judgment if you do want to step out. So I'm going to give a second, so if anybody needs to, they can make it out. Cool. All right. So, why is this not working? All right. So I've been writing on the internet for about 15 years. One of my first blogging clients was a site called Lifehack. It had a couple 100,000 followers when I started writing there. It was popular when I put up my first post on that site. If you remember when Dig was cool, it hit the front page of Dig. Right, it crashed the website. It was, it felt pretty good, right? The traffic brought down the site. It came back up later the same day, and I started getting some pretty serious comments and messages. This is when, and this was early in my career, this is when don't read the comments had to become sort of a standing rule for me because there was some really unpleasant stuff in there. I got a lot of incredibly creepy messages. I got a lot of people complaining that, you know, women shouldn't be writing about technology and you are bringing down the quality of this site and I hope you burn in hell forever. So that's a thing. I also got messages from some people who really dedicated a lot of their time to following me around the internet and being super offensive. There was one guy who decided that he was my arch nemesis and he was going to make my life hell. I haven't heard from him in a couple years, but you know, this is something I still keep an eye on because you don't know what people are going to do. Humans are humans. And these are relatively minor compared to some of the things that have happened to other female bloggers. Other women, take a minute and look up Kathy Sierra if you get a chance. To put it shortly, she wrote amazing posts about Java. And then people started sending her death threats and sending things to her house and threatening her children because she had the gall to be a woman with an opinion on the internet. I don't want to scare anybody away from blogging, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this and if I didn't talk about ways to protect yourself in these sorts of situations. And this is not just an issue for women. There have been men who have been harassed like this. There have been people who have been harassed for every slight difference that they might have on the internet. Everybody has to decide what level of risk they're comfortable with. For me, there are very specific things that I do. I don't publish my personal address anywhere online. I use a P.O. box. I'm very aggressive about moderating comments and not deleting threatening emails, but making sure that they aren't in my inbox where I don't have to look at them. I am careful about those things. And I'm totally willing to discuss some of the specific steps that I've taken, but not in front of a camera, so please find me later if that's a question that you have. But in short, you have to be careful about what information you put up about where people can find you in person and what information you are comfortable with releasing. And privilege does matter here. As an example, there's a lot of people lately who have been putting up blog posts that are like, oh, I want to find a new job. Here's everything about me. Here's my full resume. And if you are a white man and you put up like your telephone number on the internet, maybe somebody will crank call it. If you are a black woman and you put up your telephone number on the internet and you have any sort of following at all, you're going to get 100 pizzas sent to you along with some creepy death threats. So be cognizant of that, be aware. Don't let it stop you, but take your precautions. All right, just so that I don't forget. That section is over. We're not going to talk about harassment anymore in this particular talk, but we can keep going. All right, so good. Everything's great. The internet is fantastic. The internet is incredibly powerful, and the ability to publish basically whatever you want on the internet and then send people to it can be a magnificent opportunity. So I want to make sure that you all are thinking about how you can do good with this power. Like, of course, you want to make sure that you are benefiting, you are getting the jobs you want, you are writing about the topics you want, but I also want you to remember that you're part of a community. There are real people out there on the internet who are learning from you, who are going to value any tutorial you put up, any opinion piece, anything that you write is going to touch someone. So treat those people with respect. The way I like to phrase it, and I'm going to swear now, so fingers in your ears if you're under 18, do no harm, but take no shit. Don't go out of your way to make anybody's life worse. You don't have to take any crap, but you know, don't be a troll, don't be a jerk. And if you feel comfortable with it, go further. Stick up for other people on the internet. Promote people who have a hard time getting heard. Be willing to step in if somebody's being a jerk in a comment thread. Promote posts and encourage other people to write about their own projects. Pay it forward. And like I said at the beginning, blogging is an ecosystem. This is going to come back and help you a great deal. Now, I think we have, oh, this is just a quote I really like. But I think we have a few minutes left. Is that right? Excellent. So what I want to do with the rest of the time is I want to talk about the questions you have about blogging, and if you have a blog already, how's it going? Where are you struggling? What's working really well for you? So who has a question or who has a blog? Yeah.
Do you think commenting is an essential part of blogging?
Commenting?
Yeah.
So by that you mean going to other people's sites and commenting on them?
No, just having a comment thread underneath your own articles.
Oh, having a comment thread on your own site. I don't have comments on my site. That comes back to people being jerks on the internet. I don't think it's vital, but I think that it is crucial that you make it possible for people to talk about your posts somewhere. So I actually have those conversations usually on Twitter. If somebody wants to talk about my posts, I am always up for chatting about it on Twitter. I make sure that anytime somebody shares one of my posts on Twitter, I respond back, that sort of thing. So I've sort of moved my comment threads to social media. That said, some people really do love using comments. You do have to be very clear about moderation and invest some time into maintaining your own little community on your site, but it can be worth it.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, it's a bit of a question where one size doesn't fit all.
Just on the topic of themes for a blog, if you want to have posts on wildly different topics, would you recommend having separate blogs or just accept that stick with one that is just really eclectic?
So it kind of depends on your end goal, right? So if your goal is to get a new job, don't put anything that's going to get in the way of getting you that new job. So don't distract people. Like recruiters are easily distracted by shiny objects. And I can say that because I've done some recruiting and I am very easily distracted by shiny objects. But if that's the case, yeah, try to keep it very focused. But a lot of the time, if you don't have a specific end goal in mind, as long as you have some general topics that you come back to again and again, your blog is your own. Make it feel like you, make it sound like you. And if you're interested in that wide of a variety of topics, that's okay, that's you.
I'm a junior developer. I've just started developing this year, and English is also not my first language. So would you recommend for me to have some form of disclaimer in my blog saying, hey, I don't know everything, but I'm here starting out? Like, what tone should I pursue if I want to start a blog?
Here's the thing that I would say to any junior developer or anybody who's not confident about their knowledge. If you do the research, you've become the expert. It's okay to own that. It's okay to just say, this is my post. If you disagree with it, you can start your own blog and write your own post, you know? And the thing is, the process of writing, the process of doing that research, that is going to turn you into an expert a lot faster than if you're just reading other people's blog posts or if you're just commenting on Reddit or something like that. So I wouldn't worry about putting in a disclaimer. I would say since English isn't your first language, it's a little extra important to make sure you're having another human look at things. I would really recommend maybe finding somebody else who's blogging and just swap posts every time you have them. You look at that person's, they look at yours, just to get that extra layer of making sure you're getting things right. But don't be afraid to own your expertise. You don't have to apologize for being newer to the area. You don't have to apologize for speaking more than one language, because trust me, there are plenty of bloggers who only speak one language. So you're already ahead of the game.
What about non-English blogging?
So that is a very interesting question. Non-English blogging. Let me first say that my experience is mostly with particular technical communities that I've worked with bloggers who write in Spanish, in German, and in Russian. I haven't worked with a lot of other languages, but there are really active communities in a lot of different languages. So most of this is going to be about the same. There are fewer tools in terms of things like spell checkers or style guides or things like that for certain languages. But hey, that's a project where you could make your own spell checker or tool or whatever, and then become completely famous and take over that particular language's blogging scene. So I'm an optimist. We should all be optimists about this sort of thing. But yeah, totally, go for it. And especially with Python, I can point you to a couple of specific blogs I like in Spanish.
Philosophical question. How do you go about resurrecting a blog that pretty much died about a decade ago? Or is it better to actually just start a new one and pretend that the old one didn't exist, or what?
So I would first actually check if anybody is looking at those old blog posts still. If you have some sort of analytics set up, Google Analytics is free and it can be tweaked in a lot of different ways. If people are actually reading the site, I wouldn't say start over. If, however, nobody's going to that site, it's fine to just do something entirely new. Also, if we're talking about a span of like 10 years, you're probably a little bit of a different person than you were 10 years ago. You probably have slightly different opinions, you have slightly different interests, that sort of thing. So stepping aside from an old site and moving to a new blog can be a good option because it can be hard to match your tone, your opinions, everything like that from the older one.
I'm just wondering, what are some good ways for people to follow your blog? Is RSS like dying, or is it email, subscriptions, mailing lists, or?
All right, so I don't think RSS is dying, but everybody else seems to. I would definitely, so a lot of blogging platforms have RSS subscriptions built in, so I would definitely make sure that you have them. But in different cases, there are different things you want to do, and RSS is almost never the thing that you want to do. For a lot of audiences, email is far and away the best. If you are writing for a technical audience, though, you have a slightly higher chance of people using RSS feeds, and you also have a lot of people going to news curation sites like Reddit or Hacker News. So in those cases, you do want to take the time to share your posts on those sorts of sites. I use MailChimp for all of my blogging because, for all the email newsletters for my blogging, because I can just hook up my RSS feed to it and it does things and then magic happens and I can be lazy and not care about it. And MailChimp is free for a certain number of users. So if you do need to do email, I would recommend that as well.
Any more questions?
Do you want to hear horror stories about content management systems? Yes. All right. So I had tons. All right. So I was working with a major website that decided that, we're a tech blog. We're heavily invested in the technology sector. We are going to make our own content management system and show everybody how it's done. So they take this. They were on this fairly basic PHP Drupal thingy before, and it wasn't great, but it got the job done. They had to put all of their freelance bloggers, myself included, plus all of their full-time staff, through something like a week's worth of training to teach us this new content management system, during which we couldn't publish new content. So that site took a hit for a full week. And then their lovingly handcrafted artisanal content system went down about once a month for the next year. They lost half their traffic. It was bad, it was very bad, and it was all because they decided to make their own content management system. And kids, that's why you never make your own content management system. Yes, Make that somebody else's problem. There's been a ton of different systems that I've worked on. WordPress has become the most popular, honestly, with my clients because while the back end is not great, it's one of the best user experiences for writers. And writers are like programmers, we're pretty lazy. We don't want to have to tweak every last thing to get a single blog post up. But that means that there's a lot of plugins for WordPress. Did you know if you put 25 plugins on a WordPress installation, you can crash the whole thing? You can bring it to a screeching halt. And you can actually bring it to such a screeching halt that you can't remove the plugins. Pro tip, don't put 25 plugins on your WordPress site. Also, if you are running a blog where other people are contributing, don't let them put plugins on your site either, because other humans are not to be trusted, it turns out. And if you have 5 people and each of them only puts 5 plugins on, well, that's still 25. So yeah, don't let people have that sort of administrative power on a site you control unless they are actually very clear on what they're doing with that power. And even then, maybe keep an eye on them. Don't trust other humans.
So I have another question. I'm being hypothetical again. If you're an employer and you want to have an enlightened policy on blogging, how do you go about doing that? Because it sounds like I don't know, a minefield full of alligators.
It is a little bit. So the thing about letting your employees blog, if you are an employer, is that whether or not you let them blog, they're going to do whatever they want. That comes back to that whole, you really can't trust humans sometimes. That said, if you educate employees, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of it. Because especially when we're talking about a technical blog, if somebody is working on open source projects for your company and write about it, that's going to look good for your company. If somebody is writing about how great of an employer you are, that's going to look good for your company. So you can set policies that say, yes, you are totally allowed to write about how awesome we are, but if you're going to write about a negative, please come talk to us first, and let's discuss how you're going to present that. And on top of that, if you have a ton of employees who are really great bloggers and writing on their own sites, you can get them to write for your company blog. You can use their content, their blog posts, as something to fill your social media to promote your other stuff. You can say, hey, this is our lead programmer. This person is awesome. Let her tell you all about what we're doing in her own words. And that can be a huge payoff. On the flip side, if you're an employee and you really want to impress your boss, go to them and say, I have this blog post and I want to put it up on the company site. Seriously, don't ask for anything else at that first time. The second time, oh, I'd love to blog more regularly, but I'm going to need you to add some money to my paycheck for every blog post I write. Because your time should be rewarded. If you're writing for your own blog, you're going to get the benefit, right? If you're writing for somebody else's blog, you need to make sure that you're getting money, you're getting shared posts, you're getting something that you find valuable.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. If you're a government agency, how do you have an enlightened blogging policy?
All right, so government agencies are a special case. I can only speak to US government agencies. I don't have a lot of experience with other countries, unfortunately. In that case, I have seen several government agencies that have said strictly, you are not allowed to be on social media, you cannot blog, you cannot tweet, everything you write for any sort of consumption has to go through an internal review process. Humans don't work that way. You wind up in a situation where people use pen names, usually with that. And if you have an unofficial policy where people just have to use pen names and not mention the agency and sort of cover their tracks a little bit, that's probably going to be about the healthiest situation you can get. It's not going to be ideal, but that sort of limitation is never going to work out well for everybody involved, unfortunately. I do know of a couple of companies that have tried to go sort of the governmental draconian social media policies. The ones that have made it very clear how to use a pen name and how to sort of cover your tracks have done a lot better with it. All right, I think we are, is that it? Are we out of time?
Not really. We've still got 5 minutes or so
We've
if there's
still
any
got
more
5
questions.
Okay.
If
Well, if everybody is good, I will be around. I am happy to keep talking about this. I can talk for hours about this. If you want a really good time, ask me about how the GPL impacts blogging. We'll be there for 3 hours and you're going to need a drink.
Let's thanks for Thursday again.
Oh, and I also have stickers, so come find me for stickers.